Since early January, our law department has spent over 200 hours combing through those files. We are talking about more than 3,200 pages, and in addition to that, 12 hours of audio recordings. It was painstaking, time-consuming work as the Corporation Counsel's office made sure that witness information, identifying information was not released to the public inadvertently and that people's names were protected. I want to thank the law department for their tireless work to allow us to release every document to the public before the end of February. Lots of pages, to go through, and this does not count the 12 hours of audio recordings. As of this morning, all the files are publicly available through the city's FOIL portal. Today is about giving the public access to information that, after all, belongs to them. Anyone can go to the city's FOIL portal and search this. Go to the portal, put in case number 26-207, and review every file. Anyone can draw their own conclusions about how the Buffalo Police Department handled this incident and the subsequent investigation. I myself have not reviewed the full content of this release before the files were released to the public. It was important to me that we get every file published as soon as possible, and that is out to the public today. I did not want there to be any perception that this administration was filtering or shaping in any way the documents that we released today. Everything that was in the file is out on the website right now. With that in mind, I'm not going to offer any conclusions today about the substance of the investigation. In the coming weeks, we're going to do a deeper dive and review the entire disciplinary process and determine what changes we need to make to strengthen accountability and transparency and rebuild public trust. We're going to make sure we don't make the same mistake twice. In just 2 months, under the leadership of interim Commissioner Craig Macy, the Buffalo Police Department is already doing things differently. We saw that commitment to transparency reflected in the handling of the situation regarding Officer Woods. The department acted with the understanding that a lack of transparency erodes public trust. We took quick disciplinary action, and we put the entire timeline out for the public to see. No more hide the ball. In recent weeks, Commissioner Macy has also implemented new policies to dictate how officers must conduct themselves. In January, the police department updated its rules and regulations to create a clear conflict of interest policy. It forbids any officers from participating in actions where personal relationships could compromise or even appear to compromise their objectivity. It requires disclosure, recusal, and a written documentation. The department also updated its policy governing interactions with outside law enforcement agencies. If an officer becomes aware of an alleged misconduct involving a member of another agency, supervisors and internal affairs must now be noticed immediately. These are important changes, and they're just the beginning as we continue to work on modernizing and rebuilding the public trust with our police department. I thank Commissioner Macy for the work that he's done so far to improve the department and set the next commissioner up for success. Does anyone have any questions?
Why is Commissioner Macy still in his job since he was involved?
Could you identify yourself, please?
Dan Higgins from the Buffalo News. Do you still have confidence in him? Has he offered to resign?
This is like a four-part question, Dan.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So is Commissioner Macy offered to resign, and do you think he should still be in his job?
That's the question you want to ask, Dan?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Commissioner Macy has been forthcoming from the start. You will see when you review the files, the information that's in there.
I reviewed the files and you just said you didn't.
I have a timeline of the files, and I have a glossary of the files, and it said that there is a IA investigation, or Commissioner Macy was on an audio file in reviewing exactly his interaction that night. So Commissioner Macy told our transition team and our interview team forthrightly about his communications on that evening. Everything he said is collaborated by the internal affairs interviews that I've been briefed on. He understands the appearance, but I'm satisfied that he acted appropriately based on the information that he received that evening. I thought Commissioner Macy was the best person to do this job, to get us through this transition period, and so far he has exceeded expectation. But it's very clear that he revealed this information to the transition team very, very early on in the process. He laid the cards on the table.
What about Granville's sister-in-law, Lieutenant Esquilin? Her and the other officers that are involved in this, why have they not been fired?
The answer to that is because on December 31st, less than 24 hours before I took office, the issue was disposed of and closed. And I have no ability to go back and look at that action. But boy, it is quite suspicious that they closed the file a day before I took office. So the previous administration, that was the actions they took, which leads me to have no ability to go back and discipline any officers. But what I will do is go back and do a complete review of the disciplinary process and how we ended up in this unfortunate position.
Several council members have suggested reaching out to outside law agencies, including the Attorney General. Have you had any discussions with any outside law agencies about an independent investigation?
I mean, the Granville matter is closed right now, so you can't go back. So, by the action on December 31st, they put a period at the end of the conversation. So no more Niagara County DA investigation, no more Buffalo Police investigation. They closed it and said, this has been adjudicated, and you can't go back. It's a double jeopardy system, so we can't go back.
That, though, you say the public can make up its mind by reading these files. A lot of people see evidence of public corruption. The Niagara County DA did not choose to prosecute that, but considering the mountain of evidence that exists now, wouldn't it be in the public interest for the Attorney General's office to see if public corruption crimes were committed here?
That's up to the Attorney General. If they want to use their resources to come in and investigate that, I'd be very happy if they did that. But I'm going to control what I can control, and we're going to set up a process to review how we got here in this situation, noting that I cannot go backwards and discipline officers. That was closed on December 31st. But what we can do is review the entire process, right? Nobody thinks this was a good process. Nobody thinks justice was served. Nobody thinks that the city and the police department were transparent. We can't change that, but we can go forward and try to rebuild the public's trust by creating a system, that is more transparent.
Do you think that that'll work? I mean, what's done is done. A lot of people were very disappointed in the outcomes.
You know who was very disappointed in the outcome on December 31st? Me, because it took away my ability to actually look at this case and to figure out who was wrong, what was done wrong, and to then initiate and prescribe disciplinary proceedings. So that was taken away from me, and I'm sure the public sees it the same way that I do, is that was intentionally closed to prevent a fresh, open, transparent, and accountable look at this saga.
Who do you think intentionally closed it?
Who do I think closed it?
Intentionally closed the file?
Well, it was closed by the acting mayor on December 31st. It's clear who closed it. There's no mystery there.
How many officers do you think actually cooperated with the internal affairs investigation?
It should be in the index.
Mayor, I know that you control the city of Buffalo and your administration. This file shows that the Erie County Sheriff's Office did not comply with records requests from Internal Affairs. What is just your reaction to that for a law enforcement agency not to cooperate with such an important
it's a big stinky mess. None of it looks good. None of it makes the public think that if there was malfeasance or nefarious actions on any officers, that it would actually get an honest look. Remember, why do we need this transparency and accountability in law enforcement? Because law enforcement is entrusted by the public to enforce laws. They enforce laws from speeding tickets to domestic violence to major crimes. But we can't have this perception that the laws don't apply to law enforcement. And that's what the public is left with this Granville saga. 2 different policing agencies, Niagara County District Attorney. Truth hasn't come out.
Mayor, who do you think is responsible for the death of Mr. Arlott, as news broke yesterday, and Detective Richard
Hold on, before let's hold, does anyone,
We're going on topic.
yeah, any other
Does anybody else?
Granville
have any
questions?
on-topic questions first?
I know I came in a little hot.
You did come in a little hot, Mr. Higgins. I accept your apology.
I do apologize for that. Could you please be more clear about, did Mr. Macy offer his resignation?
No, Mr. Macy didn't offer his resignation because the information you're hearing today is not new to me. I knew this information before I asked Commissioner Macy to be the commissioner. He was very forthright through the transition process. This information is in this internal affairs file, and I think you should release it. And I'm in there. And here's how I'm in there. He explained that because of the lack of accountability in the rank and file of the police department over the last year, that when officers needed questions answered, the rank and file, the brass wasn't answering the phone calls. So he said his phone often rang after midnight because he was one of the only few people with rank who are actually doing their jobs and accepting phone calls. So that's why we moved on from the last commissioner. So the last commissioner was told, you can't be commissioner after December 31st. We needed to make big changes because the police department, for this period of time between Gramalia and January 1st, was not operating in any sort of productive manner where they had a policy from the top of how to act under certain circumstances, but also what is the goals of the Buffalo Police Department. So for a long time, officers were just left to fend for themselves. And that's when I brought Macy on. I knew exactly his interactions. He was frank on that. But I was convinced then, and I am convinced today, that he is the only person who could have come in and stepped into the breach of being an interim commissioner, and he's done a great job. Mind you, most people only want to be interim commissioner if they think it's going to give them a leg up on becoming the commissioner. He was straight from the start. I'll come in, I'll fill this gap. It's going to be rough, but I'll do it, but I don't want to be commissioner. So, I have great respect for the commissioner, but I have also great respect that he laid his cards on the table right away. So none of this was a surprise.
Mayor, do you have any update on the search for a new commissioner?
I do. So we've contracted with an outside search firm who's doing a national search. Just this week, they narrowed that field down to 4 candidates. I have to review now those 4 candidates and figure out, for myself, none of them are from Buffalo, but how to, communicate and go through the second and third round of interviews. But I am happy to report that, a lot of applications from all around the country, and that the field is whittled down to 4 candidates.
Considering the implication that this wasn't really handled well from the then acting mayor's office, with these policies and new things that you're putting in place in the police department, do you think that those will be able to sustain progress under different leadership whenever you leave this office?
My first step is to bring the police department into a predictable organization. I want the Buffalo Police Department to be known throughout the state as the best trained, most professional law enforcement agency. And that's what I'm going to work through for my term in mayor. But the more you can cement in normal, modern practices, those don't go away when the mayor changes. So, we want to professionalize the department, bring it in to the new century, and I'm confident that those changes we make will become the institution and will become the muscle memory of the department and will not allow it to backslide.
Mayor, on the issue with the interim commissioner, when he was chief of detectives and he had the 12-minute phone call with then Lieutenant Lucia, he advised her to write a ticket and have the vehicle impounded. Did not bring up the clear conflict of interest that it was her brother-in-law that she was, writing the ticket to. Did he tell you that that was a mistake and advocate for the change in policy?
He told me that, unbelievably, there was no policy saying you can't be the responding officer on your relative. Like, there's no policy or rule against that in the Buffalo Police Department, which is unbelievable. But those were the rules in effect on that day when that phone call was made.
And so he advocated then to change it?
He advocated to change that, and now we have a clear policy that has a conflict of any personal relationships or that could compromise or appear to compromise must do two things. You must disclose it at the time. You must recuse yourself from involvement in that investigation. But most importantly, you have to have a written paper trail of saying why. And then the second thing we did is changed how we are working with outside agencies. So in that instance, I believe people supposed there was irregularities with how the sheriff's department was conducting themselves. But now there is a straight rule that if you see those irregularities, you must report them. There's a mechanism now to say, I saw something that shouldn't have happened, and now there's rules saying you have to report that and say what you saw it happen. Before, there was no mechanism to do it.
Michael, and everybody, we could share the updated stuff from, well, BPD said that a lot. On topic, so we ready to move on to off?
Yes, Mayor, Mr. Olaf, who is
Well, we're still on topic.
Why should residents of the city of Buffalo trust the Buffalo Police today in any way that a city resident may interact with police? Well, I don't want to editorialize, but I'll just leave my question there.
I would say, there's hundreds of members of the Buffalo Police Department. A small handful, were involved in this situation. This situation was made worse by not having clear leadership during this incident. But there's a lot of very good, dedicated members of the Buffalo Police Department. This incident has shook people's faith and trust. You regain that by changing your standards, changing your rules, then executing over time. So I am confident with the changes we're going to be putting in place and the leadership, the consistent leadership that we're going to have, that we will rebuild the public's trust. But that's up to us to rebuild that public's trust. We can't say to the public, just trust us today. We have to show them that we deserve their trust, and I intend to do that. And I am confident that the hardworking members of the Buffalo Police Department, the men and women who go out there every day, they are doing a good job. We got to make it easier for them to do a good job. But when there are outliers, when there are problems, we need to investigate it fully, regardless who is involved, regardless of who's related to who. All that's off the table. So from now on, everyone gets treated equally in the city of Buffalo, whether they're in law enforcement or not in law enforcement.
Looks like one more on topic from Meg, then we'll move on her out.
There was about a dozen 911 calls that night, and officers that responded knew that there were multiple vehicles involved, but it never escalated to a watch commander, duty officer. Escalent only called the off-duty, her friend Chief Macy. Should there be a policy in place where you're getting a lot of 911 calls and it seems like the situation has scaled up, there should be some sort of automatic process where a watch commander, duty officer respond to the scene no matter what?
Look, the communication between the watch commanders, the rank and file, as demonstrated in the Woods situation, it's not great, and that's what we're trying to improve is the communication between the rank and files, the lieutenant, and the watch commanders. Some of that is direct policy, but the other part is training. You have to know how you react in every situation, not based on the past situations, but how are we supposed to? So I'm confident that with the proper training, incidents like this, it won't happen in the future. But they're only not going to happen in the future if you have a mayor who is committed to making sure trust and accountability, the two hallmarks of policing, are enforced. And I intend to do that, Nate.
In the interest of time, I'm gonna move us along to the off topics.
All right, Mayor, Mr. Alam, devastating news yesterday, him being found dead. My question to you is, who's responsible for his death? And what is your reaction to Detective Richard High apparently closing the case for a period of time before he was found?
So a few things. So we're going to put together, late morning, early afternoon, a timeline of the Buffalo Police Department's investigation from the first 911 call to the officers responding, throughout the last year. So we're going to be very clear in public of what the Buffalo Police Department did and when they did it. But I issued an order a few weeks ago saying the Buffalo Police Department will not interact or help the Department of Homeland Security in their civil immigration enforcement actions. The incident that we're talking about makes it so, of course we shouldn't, because the Department of Homeland Security, Border Patrol, and ICE, they don't know what they're doing. And it's been demonstrated. A Border Patrol agent picked up this man from the holding center custody, drove him to an ICE facility, and the ICE facility said, we don't want this guy. And then the Border Patrol officers had no protocol of what to do with the disabled man who doesn't speak English, who is confused and lost. And you know what they did? They dropped him at a closed coffee shop. That's why we do not cooperate with ICE, Homeland Security, and Border Patrol.
The shop was closed at the time.
That's my understanding that that shop closes at 7 o'clock.
Mayor, can you comment on his initial arrest by Buffalo Police? Now, this officers encountered.
I can't comment on that, but we will be releasing all that information today.
So it's been reported that Mr. Alam's attorney and family wanted him to stay in custody for fear of what ICE could do to him. Who bailed him out and why wasn't he bailed out?
We don't know that yet. I hope to know it by the end of the day. I'll be talking to the sheriff. I'll be talking to the district attorney this afternoon. I don't have a clear understanding. Was he bailed out? When the charges went from felony to a misdemeanor, did that lift his bail? But what I do know is Border Patrol didn't take him back to the holding center. If they had taken him back to the holding center, I'm going to do that again without a grammatical error. What I do know is Border Patrol did not take him back to the holding center. If they had taken him back to the holding center, the desk sergeant could have reviewed his visitor log and showed that his son was a regular visitor. Here's his phone number. They could have showed that his lawyer was an active visitor. Here's his phone number. And they could have showed that his immigration lawyer was an active visitor. And here's his phone number. So there would have been ways to contact the family so you didn't leave somebody out in the cold. And according to the preliminary information, that's been released by them, not released by the medical examiners, is that he didn't have shoes on. He had orange booties issued from the holding center. So that's bad policing, but it's also bad human beings. That is an inhumane thing to do. Buffalo police officers under this situation would have taken this person to any of the various shelters in the city of Buffalo. They would have taken the steps to try to identify what's going on with this person. Remember, doesn't speak English. He's obviously has a disability and he's blind. So there's no way for him to convey to the border officers, what he wanted to do. So they let him out of the car.
Mayor, I spoke with a member of the Burmese community yesterday who asserted that it is their belief that your policy of non-cooperation with immigration forces, Border Patrol did this in retaliation to that policy.
I can't comment on that. I don't know anything.
So my follow-up question then is, who needs to investigate this matter and who needs to be held accountable?
Who needs to investigate this matter is the federal government and Border Patrol, but they already put out a statement last night full of conclusions of what their officers and what their department did, but they did it without an investigation.
So given the context you just told us that he was released with booties without even shoes on his feet, when they say he died of health-related issues, do you believe it's not of some pre-existing medical conditions, but it's because of exposure to the elements or how they put him out?
We don't know yet. When the medical examiner's report is out, so, exposure, pre-existing illness exacerbated by living in the cold, We'll figure that out when that information becomes available.
Have you been in touch with anyone in the federal government about this yet?
My office has talked to the representatives, the congressional and the Senate representatives about this matter. They've inquired. We're all going back and forth, speaking to each other now, because everyone's trying to get a handle on this. Under normal times, you could call into the officials who run Border Patrol and get answers. But these are not normal times. You know, these are times where there are conclusions drawn without investigations, and you know, this is what's happening here. You know, the Border Patrol issued a statement saying everything's okay, but there's no investigation, there's no release of files, there's no release of interviews.
Mayor, there's a lot of fear and anger in the Burmese community about this incident. What is your message to that community, which is thousands of people now?
Yeah, I mean, the message to that community is the same message I put out there when I said the city of Buffalo won't cooperate with ICE, that Buffalo is a welcoming community. We have tens of thousands of new Americans living here. We've developed policies in city hall and county government to make sure that we have language access, that everyone is able to use city and county services, you know, regardless of their ability to communicate in English. So, you know, this is really a giant step backwards, but it's against all the policies that we've been trying to put in place through state, city, county government over the last 15 years to make Buffalo a welcoming place, to make Buffalo a place where people fleeing persecution can come and feel safe and trust law enforcement and not fear being persecuted. And, you know, that's not what happened in this situation.
Do police officers have access to a language line where they can call and get live translation when they're dealing with a member of an immigrant community?
We have all different language access, but I would, you know, caution on drawing conclusions on that. We're not quite sure. It's not been documented what language this person spoke. Several different languages are spoken in Myanmar. Some of them have a written language, some don't have a written language. So it definitely makes it hard to communicate with different people from the multilingual Burmese community. But you first got to make the effort.
You said in a statement yesterday that U.S. Customs and Border Patrol must answer for how and why this happened. What can you do within your power to demand that accountability?
We write the federal government. We write to the leaders of Homeland Security. We write to the U.S. Attorney. We write to the FBI, you know, demanding that they perform their duties under the United States Constitution. And as you've seen around the nation, those calls have not been answered.
Have you seen the body camera footage of the arrest?
I have not seen that. We're endeavoring, I have not seen the body camera footage. We're endeavoring to get that footage out along with the timeline so everyone can see it.
So the footage does exist?
Yes. Yeah, body camera footage is the policy of,
The original arrest is what you're.
Yes, the original arrest.
yeah, I mean, it's the policy of the Buffalo Police Department to wear body cameras. And those documents are stored, and we're going to release those you know, we call them documents, but they're footage.
You mentioned letters. Have you actually written a letter calling for an investigation from the USAG or the FBI?
No, not since last night, Dale.
I
Do
just
you
wanted,
plan to?
Yes.
just wanted to clarify with the ME's, or BPD statement from yesterday saying exposure was ruled out. So was it not ruled out in the death, or?
BPD is talking to the medical examiner. The medical examiner has not released their public findings yet. So I haven't seen them, and I'm going to go off of what gets released, you know, to the public. Right now, there's a lot of conversations going on. You know, the Erie County Sheriff's trying to figure out what happened. Buffalo Police Department's, you know, trying to, you know, to figure out, you know, what happened. But for multiple days, there was confusion because his family and attorneys, when he wasn't in the holding center, they thought he was in Batavia. And they were trying to find him. And it turns out, the family finally figured out he wasn't in Batavia, that he had been released alone on a cold night, a disabled man who doesn't speak English and is blind. And so several days, there was people around, several law enforcement agencies around Buffalo and Erie County were trying to find them, as was the Legal Aid Society, as was the Burmese community, as was refugee resettlement agencies. Everyone is trying, to find this man. Hold on, can we just finish this one and then go to you?
I just have one quick, different topic, but the
We
legal.
can't do a different topic until we're done with this one.
That piggybacks into my question is, did you have a conversation with his family? I mean, what was their reaction to all of this?
Remember, this is all yesterday breaking. No, I have not had conversations, with anyone's family. We're still trying to get a handle on this in terms of which law enforcement agencies, what did the federal government do, why did he get released from the holding center, who picked him up. So we're trying to just get the basic pieces of this big puzzle. And as these investigations, especially with a few different law enforcement, nonprofit agencies, a lot of information comes out quickly. But you got to synthesize it to figure out, usually after a couple days, some of the initial information gets discarded, replaced by other information. So that's where we are now. We don't want to speculate, too much. So that's my response to the medical examiner till it's out. We don't want to concretely rule based on what somebody said that they said.
Is it gonna be investigated as negligence?
Who is investigating for negligence?
Is that can?
Generally, what happens in incidents like this, after the criminal proceeding is over, usually the family brings a lawsuit against the federal government for the deprivation of civil rights under color of law. And I'd be surprised if that didn't happen in this case. Usually the civil procedure is where most of the facts come out. So if the federal government says we're not doing anything and we're not doing any criminal investigation, then the family is free to pursue its civil remedies under 42 USC 1983, which makes it so you can sue the government if somebody deprived you of your civil rights under color of law.
Mayor,
Make sure we have time to get to the other topics.
Heritage Point, the fact that it's finally going to move forward after so long and it's such a key piece of property in the city.
I'm sort of like, Missouri's got that state logo, show me. So this is the third time I've heard Heritage Point is moving forward. So I'll celebrate with you when construction starts.
Yeah, what about Terry Pagula saying that he wants to get involved and fork out the bills for it, make it happen?
Once again, that's great. Let's see when the construction starts. There's been several times states come in with money, states come in with more money. Each of that was a promise that the developer would then do the project. But it's been a while, and that's an embarrassment on our waterfront. I am optimistic that if Terry Pagula is going to come involved, this will get that project moving. But remember, it's not Terry Pagula's project. So we still have to work with the developer who hasn't seemed too keen on getting this project done. So it's February. If around May there's a big construction going on, then I'll say, that's great, Heritage Point's moving.
Legal costs for the lawsuit over the capital budget bonds have now exceeded $150,000. Is that rising cost concerning to you?
What's really concerning to me that there is such a failure of government in the city of Buffalo that for 2 years, money that was bonded to be able to fix our streets, to be able to fix our community centers, to be able to fix our pools, has never materialized on the street. And it never materialized because there's a fight between the comptroller and the last mayor. So when those fights happen, the public pays. So right now, the potholes look like the potholes do because we weren't able to use bonded capital from last year to fix the potholes. Now this year's money that should be going on the street now for construction to start in March, April, and May is held up in court. So sure, we don't want to spend $150,000 suing each other in City Hall, but the real impact is the fact that the quality of life of the city of Buffalo has eroded because of this lawsuit. It's being appealed, it's in the 4th Department, and I am hopeful there'll be a decision on this in March. And if the decision is clear and the decision is concise, we're going to be ready to get that money out on the street. But if that gets delayed, then it doesn't bode well for being able to fix our pools and to fix our community centers and to fix our roads, this summer.
Any thoughts on the NFL Combine?
I've been concentrating on the NHL draft. So I put my papers in, and I'm eligible to be drafted. I hope to be picked up. I don't think I can do 20 minutes a game anymore, but I think I can definitely do 10 minutes a game. I have a good right-handed shot from the point, and I got a feeling there's going to be a lot of interest at the draft. I'm going to be ready for it.